Good morning, everyone. Mary, we all know. Good to have you with us, Mary. So our panelists, first we have Anthony Edwards. As an award-winning actor, director, producer. If you're a fan of ER, as I am, you know his work. A survivor of child sexual abuse by a trusted mentor. He's turned his journey of healing into advocacy, using his platform to raise awareness and support of other survivors. Welcome. Lauren Book. Lauren is a passionate child advocate, former Florida State Senator, and founder of the nonprofit Lauren's Kids, dedicating to ending child sexual abuse and exploitation. A survivor herself, she has turned her experience into a lifelong mission to protect and empower children everywhere. Aaron Stone. Aaron is a retired U.S. Army combat medic who served 27 years across multiple war zones. Thank you for your service. Welcome home. He also is a survivor of child sexual abuse. He now uses his voice and experience to raise awareness and inspire healing within the military and beyond. I know all of us here gathered this morning, this is the choir. All of us participate in this work for a variety of reasons. I, like many people here, am a survivor, and we know the pain of this experience and the healing that can come. So let's begin our conversation. First, this question is for Mary and Lauren. Senator, may I call you Lauren? Thank you. The index shows that the average state score is just 50 out of 100, with only 5 states in D.C. rising above failing grades. So Mary, we start with you. How would you explain the lack of progress?
Thank you. I think that there's 3 main points that we need to think about. The first, as Laura pointed out, is fragmentation. So if you think about every state having their own juvenile justice system, education system, healthcare system, law enforcement system, judicial system. So they're all fragmented. Many of these systems do not talk to each other within their own state. Forget about state to state. So what happens is that children fall through the cracks. All right. The second reason is prevention. And prevention, in my mind, it's not a mystery. We know what works with prevention. We have programs that are in the schools now that can be replicated. And I do want to mention, it's not just prevention for the children, it's also teaching the parents prevention and the people that meet with the survivors prevention. And Childhood USA and Childhood in Sweden also fund perpetrator prevention. So we need to broaden that umbrella overall so that more children are safe. But I have more to talk about prevention. I could talk about prevention forever because that's what's needed, and it's an easy fix. It is an easy fix. And then the third is what I think is critically important, is that the systems that we have don't match the reality of what happens when someone sexually abuses a child. And it is not fair to the survivor, to their family, that they have to disclose within X amount of time or they can't bring charges. As we know, most people do not disclose right away. They can wait till their 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s. 1 in 5 never disclose at all. So the statute of limitations has to be eliminated. I worked very hard to get it changed in New York State. I know Senator Book has also worked very hard to get these things changed, but it needs to be eliminated. We can't put a time frame on when someone decides that they're brave enough to come forward with their trauma. And then compensation for victims also needs to change. It's a morass. You have to try to figure out on your own. Can I get reimbursed for emergency room care? We should not put children through that. And then the third thing is that child advocacy centers are state of the art. All right, and not every child in the United States has access to a child advocacy center. That is a right every child should have.
Thank you. Senator, a question for you, Lauren. I mean, your lane is where the rubber meets the road, right? I mean, there are a variety of things you have to budget for every year. This is just one of a long list of things. So what can legislators do moving forward to ensure protecting children becomes a political priority?
Well, thank you, and thank you everybody for being here. I think, as you said, this is our echo chamber. We are all on the same team, and I think one of the things that strikes me the most about that question, protecting children is nonpartisan. Everybody wants to protect children. Everybody wants to make sure that children are kept safe. It's how do we go about doing that? And I think to ignore the political landscape when the rubber meets the road politically in a world where we still have these two-party structures in states where we have to keep kids safe. At the end of the day, all of these metrics are so important, and it's a guide and it serves as a benchmark. But we have to look at how do we do it? What do we do? And I really love some of the comments that were made about legislators. They don't have necessarily what to do, where to do, how to go. We have a citizen-driven legislature in Florida and many states across the country. So you bring to it where you are. We have farmers, we have doctors, even some that play them on TV. And then, we've got people who are in this space and care about this issue because it's where we come from. And I'm lucky to have done that and be in that lane and have served in the legislature. A lot of people don't know what a CAC is until you have to use it. What does that mean? What does that look like? The reality is this report is so important because it serves as a benchmark. It's a guide. It's how do we in Florida, in Alabama, in Connecticut use a North Star to continue to keep kids safe. And at the end of the day, it isn't partisan. It's what matters most. Where do we drive our funding? And we're going to get to that later on. But at the end of the day, CACs need to be funded, not just federally, but at a statewide level. What does that look like? It shouldn't matter if a child is abused in Baker County, Florida, or in Connecticut, or in LA. It should, at the end of the day, they should know where they're going. They should receive the same multidisciplinary approach to protecting that child. And this patchwork of laws that pertain to the criminal code, as was discussed, is really important to look at also. And so I think this provides states with a benchmark where you kind of, and I'm going to say something a little controversial, oh shit, we're not doing that great. I've been working in this space my entire career. It's my life's work. And I'm like, we have 50. What are we going to do? Why are we here? What more needs to be done? And we've done a lot of work. But this now you can go back to policymakers and say, hey, we're not doing so great. Here's where we need to look at to make us better. And I think this report provides an opportunity to do so that you can go to policymakers and make a difference. And I think too, again, back to and I want to, give you back the mic, but the political landscape here also dictates a lot of what this is. And I don't want to get into the politics of it necessarily, but when you talk about abstinence-only education or prevention education in those ways, the landscape sort of dictates how and what we're able to push forward. And I think that ignoring that doesn't do us any good.
If I may ask you a quick follow. I know this is an hour-long question I'm asking you, but I need a 30-second response.
Yeah, I'll try.
So you said the what, but why hasn't it occurred? You say this is an issue that crosses political parties, but yet that divide still exists. So is there one particular holdup that people in this room could help make better?
I think that people don't necessarily know the what, right? Like, what do? We want to protect kids, but what do? Is it funding our child advocacy centers? If people don't know what the heck those are, then they don't. And I also think people pick a lane, right? So we work on prevention. That's all I've talked about my entire career. So I could talk to you guys for 15 years about prevention. But I think this drives the what now. What are those benchmarks that we need to talk about, that we need to address to make us better, to get us from a 50 to a 70, from a 70 to a 90, and then to 100, so that children are protected in ways that they're not right now.
So what I hear you say is information is power. Yes?
I just want to add one more thing to what the senator's saying, is that this index is remarkable because it has state profiles, and you can get them all on our website today or on the Economist website. But they have state profiles, but they didn't stop there. They're giving us success stories for other states, so they can take what Delaware did. This is the statute. This is what Delaware did to fund their CACs, and they can move it to Nebraska. I mean, I think that's the other beauty of this report, is that it's not just here you go. It's like, no, here you go, but this is what you can do.
Sure. Thank you, ma'am. Anthony and Aaron, Mary just used the phrase success stories. And when I think about you two gentlemen as survivors, that there is success in your story. So as survivors often wait decades to disclose abuse. What barriers kept you from speaking out earlier, and what could have made disclosure safer or easier for you?
I just want to share a little experience of the fact that when I was on ER, I worked with an organization that was trying to deal with autism in the United States. It's called Cure Autism Now. I had healthy kids. But what I found in doing the advocacy in Cure Autism Now is that children do not have a voice. And they haven't. And if you wanted to go to Washington and talk about prostate cancer, there was a lineup to talk about advocacy there. And kids don't have a voice. So this choir here is giving voice to a really underrepresented population. So thank you for that. I also realized that because of the experience, men are silenced. I am classically average. I was 52 years old before I started speaking about this, because what men do is they minimize. And as Dan so beautifully put it, it's the in The Catcher in the Rye. In the Rye, children's job is to fall in love. And the adult's job is to protect them. And when that breaks down, that's what happens here. And in the case of my experience, when you're assaulted or abused by the person you love, a mentor, someone you trust, the world does not make sense. And in that instance, I talk about it, it's as if something broke. And you realize that your life at that point is in fear. And you must learn to survive. And the fact that, there's 1 in 6 men have been abused in this country, which is the number that we've come up with. And that means before the age of 18. And that means that there's close to 30 million American men that are walking around right now and they're not talking. And not only are they not talking, but as Dan said, they're medicating. They're medicating with alcohol, they're medicating with power, control. And what we have, though, is the example that I've experienced in the last 11 years is that women have been leading this effort to protect children. And it's a female, and there's a reason for that. It's because they have led the movement. They know what it is to fight. And men, as opposed to getting angry and galvanizing and going, me too, we need to shut out. The fact is, men have been carrying this like I did, and I know Aaron and I have talked about forever, and the rage is already there. You've got 30 million American men who are angry. And what they actually need to do is the opposite. They need to get soft, and they need to get quiet and find a safe place to have that first conversation. So there's so many great actionable political things that we can do, but there's a lot of really subtle places in which families and members and aunts and uncles can notice things in someone's behavior and give space for men to have that first conversation. And as a result, I believe you will end up with 27, 30 million more advocates to help do the work that women have been leading in protecting children and keeping them safe.
Thank you very much. Aaron, how about you, sir?
Hard to follow up on that. But as you said, also, for me, it was a matter of survival, not choice. My rapist, we like to say sexual assault, sexual abuse. I use the word rape, what happened to me, because rape is chaos, rape is pain, rape is humiliation, and it leaves nothing ambiguous to what happened. I grew up fatherless. So this teacher took me in as a teenager because he knew that, hey, this man is looking for that male role model, looking for that mentor. And for a year, he groomed me. And I know grooming is sadly a word that's thrown around quite a bit in the nation lately, but that's what he did for a year. He methodically groomed me, and one morning, whether it was something he planned or something that he chose to do at the moment, he raped me. And since that moment, shame had been my main motivator, because growing up, not only as a U.S. male, but a Southern male, I was taught inadvertently that if you cannot protect yourself, if you cannot protect your family, if you cannot protect those in charge or under your charge, then you're useless. So even when my own mother sort of knew something was going on, I lied to her and told her that no, we simply got into an argument. And I was able to compartmentalize that attack for so long. It wasn't for 17 years that I actually spoke up, only because my body told me to. I had a nervous breakdown. And by then, I already been in the military for going on 14, 15 years. In the late 90s, when I joined the military, it was a stigma to seek help with behavioral health. This is before the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan had kicked off. You were as seen as the weak link. You were detrimental to the force. If you can't take care of yourself, those under your charge, even though we harped endlessly on taking care of our bodies, but the gray stuff between our ears, no. So I was able to keep my professional and personal life very separate, very well for a very long time, to the point where even my wife had no idea what had happened to me. And she was the brave one who told me on our second or third date that she was also a survivor of sexual abuse from a teenager when her father was stationed in Germany. Yet I was still the coward that kept it to myself. And so, yes, it's about that education. It's about showing that vulnerability. It's about men realizing that we, too, are human. It is okay to show emotions. It is okay to show feelings. It is okay to seek help.
Yeah.
Mary, my next question is for you, but I want to pause for a second and spend a little more time with Aaron and Anthony in particular. And anyone feel free to weigh in, because all of us have our own personal experiences. But when the two of you spoke, the temperature in the room rose. You could see it in the expressions of people, the anger, the frustration. This is a heavy topic we're discussing. This may not be the proper question to ask, but I'll ask it anyway. In this moment now, what gives you peace? What gives you calm? What allows you to move forward, right? Because when you hear these statistics, when you know these realities, God damn it, it's hard to wake up in the morning.
It's getting together with other survivors. I mean, there's the end result of unprocessed trauma is isolation and self-annihilation. That's what happens. People end up killing themselves through a lot of different means. But the thing that gives me hope is the fact that there's some really concrete things in relation to stigma that we can all share with other people, which is so many survivors will say, yeah, I didn't say anything because I knew that, if you've been perpetrated, you're going to perpetrate. Myth. Huge myth. The fact that another huge myth is that, and it has to do with homophobia in this country. And I'm sure it's worldwide, but a group has been able to associate the fact, or try to associate that pedophilia or male-on-male sexual abuse has somehow related to being gay. And the homophobia is huge, and it silences men. And we have to remind people, because the facts are that the vast majority of male-on-boy sexual abuse is by very vocally heterosexual men, and it is, and yet this way of hiding behind that. So I guess I get hope in that there's some really simple things that are going to break stigma, and I shared this with some of the people here. It's like, just think of this as breast cancer. 50 years ago, there was so much shame for women caring about this relationship with their breasts and the cancer thing, and all they had to do was talk and shift the conversation. And I'm hopeful, because I feel like once we can get away out of this stigma, and we have the ability with internet and providing information, and the fact, Aaron out there speaking directly to the military about that, we can lower the temperature. Because the fact is, we're not going to eliminate perpetrators. We're not. But we are going to change the time that we react to them. And that's where the difference happens. And then we can get in there and do that work and get those kids into children advocacy centers and support.
Thank you. Sorry. Anything you want to add there?
No. To me, for hope is just speaking to a group of 1,000 soldiers. And days, weeks, months later, I'll receive one email from one male soldier, or even female, either one, survivor, who says, because of you, because you were there in front of me telling your story, because you gave me hope, because you showed me there is another way, that I was able to seek help myself. And as cliche as it sounds, it is the truth, and that's why I do what I do, and I thank you all for what you do.
Thank you. Mary, hope is a powerful word. The index finds prevention capacity is one of the weakest areas nationwide. Which preventive strategies, such as mandated training, should states scale first for the biggest impact?
I think there's two areas that the states need to focus on. One is, again, we know what works. We have evidence-based programs. I'm very proud that I participated in making one of them evidence-based, Safe Touches, and it's for kindergartners through the 3rd grade. It is now spread through different states. It's considered one way to get to children, because sadly, kindergarten through 3rd grade, the average age of children being abused can be like between 10, 11, 12. So you have to get to them younger. And this program used puppets. And I'll just tell you a quick story. Someone called me recently that's having the program replicated in Pennsylvania. And an 8-year-old girl came into a child advocacy center. And she was being sexually abused by a neighbor. And the mom was with the child, and the mom said to this child, "What made you tell us now?" And she said, "The puppets told me it was okay to tell." And that's what we need. We need programs like that. The senator has Lawrence Kids. There's also Stewards of Children. There are programs that we believe work and make a difference. So those programs have to be scaled. All right, and we have to engage parents because, what we're taught in school, they have to go home, they have to reinforce it. We have to teach educators. We have to teach people in youth-serving organizations what signs and symptoms to look for. How do you recognize if someone's being groomed? All right, so these are all easy fixes schools can implement. Right now, there's over 15 million children that do not have access to prevention programs, and we need to change that. All right, and then policy-wise, states need to have what's called the Child Sex Abuse Action Plan. I'm on the one for New York State, but most states don't have one. All right, every state needs to have one. And that goes into policies and procedures like codes of conduct for teachers, for coaches, for people that work in schools. The report references this term. It's called passing the trash. I don't like the term, but let me explain what that's all about. It's that in many states in the United States right now, in schools and in youth-serving organizations, if an individual is alleged to have sexually abused or assaulted a child, they do not have to report them to law enforcement. They can just have them resign, transfer them, they just fade away.
It worked for the Catholic Church.
Well, and they just fade away because the law states they do not have to report them to law enforcement. I worked with a whole advocacy group in New York State to change that law because until like 2019, all the private schools in New York State did not have to report. Think about why we see all the scandals in private schools in New York State over the last decade or so. Well, now they must report to law enforcement. But that has to be across the board. That cannot be optional. So we have to look at codes of conduct, we have to change the laws, and we just have to have prevention programs in all the schools.
Thank you, Mary. This next question is for the senator. Mary, I want you to weigh in on the back end. If you would, Lauren, make the fiscal argument for this, right? I mean, because there are 47,000 important causes, things that have to be supported. How do you make the fiscal argument for the value in this, whether it's politics or in the private sector? The question scripted here is, in regards to prevention, which legislative levers, such as statewide action plans, mandated prevention education, and closing child marriage loopholes, do you see as most urgent for your state, for example?
So I think prevention is the most important thing. I think, though, it's very hard to prove that the return on investment for prevention, because prevention is always hard to prove. But I'm going to do an activity with you because I'm going to go back to my classroom roots, so bear with me. I want all of you to, first of all, keep this in mind. 1 in 3, 1 in 5, and we talk about 1 in 5 kids. So 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 5 boys will be sexually abused before they're 18 years old. We know that 90% of the time, children are abused by someone they know, love, and trust. We know that 95% of sexual abuse is preventable with education and awareness. How many of you in this room we're taught stranger danger. Raise your hand. Okay. 90% of the time, it's somebody you know, love, and trust. Now, I want you to close your eyes, all of us, and go back to kindergarten and first grade. And I want you to think about who is a person who may hurt you. What does that individual look like? What is that individual wearing? What do they have in their hands? Okay, open your eyes. I don't have my drawing utensils with me, but we're going to talk it through right now. Was that individual, and you can shout it out, a man or a woman? Man. Was it a tall man or a short man? Tall. What kind of clothes was this person wearing? Were they neatly dressed, or were they wearing messy clothes? Messy clothes. What did this person have in their hand? What did they have in their hand? Did you see anything? Candy, a leash, a knife, a sword, a gun. I am telling you things that children tell me every single day, not just here in the United States, but internationally, all over the world. Why? Because children believe that a person that is going to hurt them is a tall man, sorry tall guys in the room, but is a man with messy clothes, with a gun, a knife, a sword, candy, or a leash, and is going to take them away. That is not who is going to harm them 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10. It's the coach, it's the mentor, it's the nanny, it's the teacher, it's the person in power. Why? Because predators have an MO. We know it. And here's the key for prevention. It's not just about teaching our children, and it's not just about a one-off, come to my school and talk for an hour. That's not going to do it. It's scaffolding knowledge and creating an environment where children feel safe, where they know red flags, where they know who to talk to, where we change the law where it comes to reporting. You can't just tell if a child discloses abuse, you can't just go to a principal and think that that's going to end the problem or fix the issue. No, in the state of Florida, we are mandatory reporters. And if you don't go and make a report to DCF, you are going to jail. And that's the way it should be. Why? Because children need to be kept safe. And at the end of the day, it's not just, again, about teaching our children how to keep themselves safe. It's about teaching teachers how to report, where do I go, what do I do, what do I look for? If a child, and I'm doing a prevention education curriculum, and I know that I'm going on, so tell me to stop. But if I notice that a child is
I grew up
behaving
Pentecostal, so please keep going.
in a way that looks different, you know that something is going on. What questions do I ask? What do I listen for as an educator? We go into this business of teaching not because it's the greatest paying field in the world, but because we want to make a life for children that 9 times out of 10 you didn't have for yourself, and teach them and encourage them and help them grow and enrich them. Now, the other thing we have to do is teach parents what to look for. What are the red flags? What do I need to identify? And then, again, you talked about youth serving organizations. We put my kids in youth sports. We put my kids at the Girl Scouts, happens there. Eagle Scouts, happens there. What do we need to look for? How do we need to keep them safe? It's prevention, and it's not just prevention in schools. And then it's how do we change it, modify it, and continue to do what we need to do. The new frontier, friends, is not just this. It's not what we went through. It's the internet, and I know we're going to get there.
Yes.
But let me tell you, it's a scary place.
Yes. I love the phrase you use, scaffolding knowledge. That's powerful. Thank you. Looks like you want to say
I
something.
just want to say one quick, we have such a great example of it happening right now. Boy Scouts of America, okay? Statute of limitations opens up. An organization that was not allowed to exist in England because they knew it was a breeding ground. It's the example. Why do we rob banks? Because that's where the money is. Why did they? When this opened up, 80,000 lawsuits from the Boy Scouts of America. Those are the ones that actually filed. So the numbers are huge. And what would happen if they'd had actual protocol, mandatory reporting, and education so that it wouldn't be safe? These predators they bind those chinks, and we need to cover those.
Thank you, sir. Next question. This is for all of you. What role should survivors play in shaping state policies and prevention strategies? What resources would have helped when you disclosed?
For me, it's about, not survivors being tokens at the table, but actually being legs at the table. to actually being part of legislations, for not being just, okay, just a number on the board, but actually being there and having a voice there, actually putting in our input, what worked for me, what didn't work for me, instead of people just speculating, well, this might work for Survivor, or this might, well, I've been there, I know what worked for me. It may not work for everyone, but it worked for most people, to actually get our voice, to let us speak up, because most of the time, we're silent the whole time simply because we're afraid to speak up, because every time we tell our story, we're re-traumatized. I'm still on medications. I still see therapy. I tell my story every single time I speak to a group, and it re-traumatizes me, but it also, in turn, gives me therapy, because I know that my trauma is helping someone else arise above the trauma they may have experienced, whether it was in the military, whether it was at school, at home, or wherever. And you're right, we teach our children stranger danger. No, it's those that wear badges. It's those that wear collars. It's those that are our teachers, our mentors, have easy access to us, but they have that power. Even though I had not seen that man who raped me since the day that happened, he still held power over me. He knew I wasn't going to say a word.
I think the other part of this is sitting in the legislative capacity and where do survivors come. I know it is incredibly difficult to be the face of an issue, but stories drive policy, especially in hard ways. And we talked a little bit, and we're going to talk more about the statute of limitations. The only way we were able to change the statute of limitations in Florida were stories. And who are we fighting against? The church. That is the reality. The church was lobbying against changing the statute of limitations. Why do you think? Okay, these are, and if you didn't have survivor stories, you didn't have survivors driving, pushing, moving the needle forward in ways that is meaningful, it's very hard to do. And it's hard when you're going against a climate and a huge, gigantic, looming presence over everything. And I think that the other part of this is when that face and when that story looks like you, oh, I have to pay attention to this. That's an important piece, I think, to this puzzle as well, which is very hard, but a very big reality to moving the needle when it comes to policies in this way. When you're able to put a face, put an issue, and move it forward, those things drive change.
And I would just say, and activating and allowing also, and I would speak for men in this way, that it's okay, and actually just speaking, just recovering, just healing your immediate circle, because families are damaged by this. You know, it's mothers of, sisters, brothers, children of survivors that have been affected by this thing. And as that healing happens, as that recovery happens, these people will support, because there are people who are cut out to tell their story in public, and Aaron can do that, but a lot of people aren't, and it's not everybody's responsibility to become a senator or to become a doctor specializing in it, but we can gain the momentum through the numbers, and it is the numbers. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Mary, this next question is for you, and I'm sure you've noticed, as I have, there's been lots of head nodding in the room. That stories shared here are stories experienced in the audience as well. Children's advocacy centers are recognized as best practice, yet coverage and funding vary widely. What structural changes are needed to ensure every child has access to a CAC that meets national standards?
First of all, for everyone, just to understand what child advocacy centers are, I want to make it clear. They are the best practice, gold standard model in the United States. I set up the first one in the Bronx of New York City. I'm very proud of that. And I don't know if Liz Roberts is here, but she oversees many of them right now in New York, and all children in New York City have access. The issue with, so under one roof, we have the district attorney, all right, we have the special victim squad, we have child protective services, we have a forensic medical specialist and social workers. So that child, rather than having to go from place to place to place, retell their story, wonder if anyone's believing them, why am I telling my story again? I guess they don't believe me, maybe I should change my story. This child is held with a trauma-focused, child-centered group of individuals trained in how to get the story once. It aids in prosecution, investigation, and in healing. child advocacy centers often have a part with trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy that the family and non-offending, whoever was the offender, non-offending parent can access. The issues with them right now is that in the United States, we have a little under 1,000, okay? And what we really want, what the Out of the Shadows Index has said, is we need one in every county. Well, I just happened to Google this yesterday, Annika, when we were having a meeting, because I said, how many counties are there in the United States? Well, there's 3,114 counties. We only have under 1,000 child advocacy centers. So think about rural Alaska, where a trip to a child advocacy center could be 5 or 6 hours for a child. All right, so that we do not have transportation. All right, so that right there is an issue. The other issue is that funding. I wanted to spend my time helping the multidisciplinary team on these cases. I spent 80% of my time fundraising because we did not have a dedicated funding stream. All right, but that can change. I mean, I've seen other countries, when I read through all of the nuances of the report. I love the report, Laura. I've already read it 4 times. I have tons of notes up here about all the stats. But some states add $10 onto a birth certificate, and that extra $10 funds child advocacy centers. Others add a fee onto when someone has to pay a fine in court, $400. Those $400 fund a child advocacy center. So there's fixes that we can use that can move this forward and make sure, you know, as the senator was alluding to, a child shouldn't have access to the best standard of care because of their zip code. A child needs access to the best standard of care as soon as humanly possible when they've had the ability to come forward and tell their story.
That's just crazy talk.
I'm phrasing this question poorly, but because there are a number of people in this room who spend their time and energy on raising money. Give us, like, what's, in a world in which so many organizations need support, what's the elevator pitch? What's the sales pitch to say, if you help this, you will prevent this?
If you help a child get through one of the most horrible, horrific, humiliating things that they've ever encountered, you are going to change the trajectory of their life. Child sexual abuse is considered an ACE, an adverse childhood experience, and I don't have time. I teach about ACEs. I can't go into it now. But everything goes down if they don't get the help and healing they need. And if they can get to a child advocacy center and be surrounded by that support, their trajectory will go up. And if not, we're looking at everything from cardiac issues to obesity, mental health, COPD. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of what happens to children when they have these horrors occur to them.
Thank you very much. This next question is for Aaron and Anthony, and we're going to get to AI, and then shortly thereafter we'll open up, forgive me for keeping my back to the side of the room, we'll open it up to questions, because I know there are a number of questions in the room. So Aaron and Anthony, the report describes how systems can re-traumatize survivors through disbelief, judgment, or repeated retelling of abuse. What kinds of responses help you feel heard and supported, and what caused further pain?
I'll jump right in. I'm part of a group. I'm an actor. I work in the Broadway community here. How many years ago? 5 years ago? Wade James and Wade Safechuck and Wade Robson and James Safechuck, who were the 2 victims of Michael Jackson, spoke their story. They told their truth. No one argues it. And if you saw the documentary on Leaving Neverland, you saw it. Those are survivors. Told their truth, spoke it. There's no question about it. MJ the Musical is on Broadway. When that show was off, when it was in Chicago, that's when the documentary came out. The documentary came out. The show at the time was called Can't Stop Till You Get Enough. Literally. Those people just went, okay, we're going to put it aside. We're not going to deal with it. We're going to change whatever. And they opened it up. the amount of greed around protecting corporate entities, which is the Jackson Foundation, which is the Boy Scouts of America, which is the Catholic Church, the amount of lawyers put up to protect institutions like that. Wade and James have been in a civil suit for over 14 years. And they're talking about them, you know, and the way they're disparaged. That's really disheartening to me. You know, we can jump right to it. We have a president who said he grabs women by the, and people look the other way. They don't want to know and feel, and they are scared of being uncomfortable. And we've got to wake people up to know that it's only through this uncomfortableness from looking at these things do we actually change. And that's where it's flip sides for me, both the hope and the pain of the reality, you know?
Thank you.
I mean,
And you're right, it's about having that uncomfortable conversation because we in the US, when it comes to sexuality, it's something that is still very taboo and refuse to talk about. When I do know a breakdown, when I finally told my story, when I finally sought help, I was able to do some research and find out that there was no statute of limitations in North Carolina for statutory rape. And through a series of events, just a few months after I finally told my story, I was able to put my perpetrator, my rapist, my attacker in jail. But, thank you. But reading the headlines, you know, I committed the cardinal sin of the internet, which was to read comments. And you see things like, oh, why did this person wait so long? If it was me, I would have done something about it. The thing is, you don't know what you would have done unless you're in that person's shoes. And it didn't even say that I was a male or female. It just said a former student. So, of course, societal biases probably just assumed that it was a female. And I was preparing to tell my story on the stand, but eventually he pled out. But that's the thing, is just having someone willing to listen. We, especially as a leader growing up, I want to solve problems. I want to get to the root to solve what's going on. And sometimes people do not need their problem solved at the time. Sometimes they just need someone to listen. Just put down the phone, step away from the internet for a little bit, and just simply listen. Every time I was stationed at a new base, I was in San Antonio about 10 years ago. And I always told my story to my new organization so they know that, hey, even though I am your senior leader, this is what happened to me. And if I can tell my story, if I can seek help, so can you. And that very day, I had a soldier come into my room, Sergeant First Class Ramon Reyes. 20 years prior, he had been sodomized and raped with a broomstick by his new teammates through initiations and hazings. Stuff, sadly, we still see not only in the military, but in colleges, universities across the board. I mean, I'm in El Paso, Texas now, and just down the street from me is New Mexico State University, where my daughter's going to school now. And just a couple years ago, their basketball team was disbanded because of what they called, quote unquote, locker room antics, because they were taught that this is okay. And then they get out into the real world and realize there are consequences to your actions. We call it canceling. I call it consequences, because people are finally being held responsible for what they do. Because when a survivor speaks up, look at our national leaders, as you were saying. The survivor speaks up, say, this happened to me 10, 20, 30 years ago. Do we as a society, do we applaud them? Do we thank them for doing what we like to call the hard right over the easy wrong? No. We ostracize them. We put them down. We set a precedence for everyone else. And so for any other survivor that wants to speak up, they saw what happened to that person, and they don't want their livelihood or their life taken away from them. So they sit down, they shut up, and they color from the lines as they're told to do so.
Aaron and Anthony, a follow-up question, if I may. If you can recall, who was the person who helped you first? And who was the person you wished had helped you?
the person who helped me was a person who had set an example in here. Her name's Mariska Hargitay. You guys know her. She and I had worked together on ER, and then when she came and started her SVU thing, she'd done so much work in advocacy for domestic violence. And when I was starting to confront this in my assaulter, the person who assaulted me, we never say my, can't say my, the person who assaulted me was in the news, and the rage that came up. I got so angry. I really wanted to kill him. The rage was huge. I want to take out an ad in the Hollywood Reporter and Variety and say, hey, Goose and Dr. Green was assaulted by this man. Like, I had this whole fantasy. But I made a really important choice. And I thank my higher power for that. And I called Mariska first. And I said, I got to talk to you. And I went and talked to her. And I told her, and she lovingly said, that's great, I understand your everything. Why don't we get you over here first and first start talking to a trauma-informed therapist? And that's how it started for me. And that's the simple magic of what can happen. Because like I'm telling you, once you start to look at this stuff, the rage is huge, you know, and this trauma will come out. I saw it, just a side note, I saw it with my father, a World War II veteran who experienced horrific trauma at 19 years old. And in the last 4 years of his life, in his 90s, every day of his life, he wept and could not understand how that could have happened to him. It comes out, it's not going. So giving the opportunity through support first, and no offense to lawyers, but take your legal action down the road a bit. Get healthy first.
Yeah, thank you. And how about you? Who helped you first?
For me, my first was my first therapist. My body had told me on 9 January 2010, my birthday, through a breakdown while I was driving. I don't know if it was a sight, a sound, or a smell, but I started to cry and shake uncontrollably. I pulled over, I called my wife, and I told her, I cannot do this anymore. That next day, I'm enrolled in an inpatient behavioral health facility, and a group of about 15 other people. I'm the only service member in there. And I was planning to do the soldierly thing, was put my head down, shut up, get past the program, and move on with my life. But Marv, my counselor, he actually kind of reminded me of Richard Pate, who was the rapist. Their mannerisms, they looked alike. He had me open up and tell my story for the first time that very morning, and the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders. That morning, just like you do, sir, we took that first step towards recovery. This morning I woke up and I took that first step again because of the constant, continuous process.
A counselor, a colleague, a friend. We have time for 2 more questions and we'll open up to the audience. Lauren, this question's for you. Survivors often, as we've heard, wait until age 52 to disclose their abuse, but many states still enforce short statutes of limitations. Why should states pass legislation that eliminates statute of limitations for child sexual abuse and exploitation?
So to go to the dentist, I have to be put to sleep. When my son goes to hockey, I constantly have to talk to my therapist about the fear of the monster inside of me that's going to come out and sexually assault all these little kids in a locker room. When my daughter was newborn, it was impossible for me to change her diaper when she'd cry because I was afraid I was doing something to hurt her. I'm 41 years old. There is no statute of limitations of my pain, of Anthony's pain, of Aaron's pain, of any survivor's pain. We live it every single day. We could be completely fine having been to our trauma therapists and going about our day. A smell, a sound can put us in a place that is very, very bad. And that is today, that will be in 10 years from now, that was 5 years ago. That is our reality, and that is nothing that we asked for. We got a life sentence. They perpetrated that crime. If it takes us 10 years, if it takes us 20 years, if it takes us 40 years, the fuck cares? We were strong enough at that point, and it took us that long to get there, and we're lucky that we did. That's why we should be eliminating the statute of limitations when it comes to these types of crimes. Do you know how hard it is for any one of us in the room? Let me ask you, do you remember 5 years ago when you had sex, what color the carpet was? Do you know what the weather was outside? But do you know that we ask that of children when they come forward? And if they say something that deviates, that's wrong, you know what? Uncredible. They didn't do this. We make this impossible. Impossible. But you know what? When we remove the statute of limitations, that does not mean that we remove those legal pieces, because for the lawyers in the room, of which I am not, but I know that it is important, those things are still in place. Harder to prove all those years later, but not impossible. That is why we need to remove these statute of limitations, because every single survivor that you know is living an invisible battle every single day of our lives. And that was a sentence that we were handed We should not have a limit of time to say, well, it's been too long. Sorry you waited. Sorry it took so long. This guy or gal, because mine was a gal, is still out there harming children. Shouldn't be.
Thank you. I think fuck is permissible in this room. So thank you for that. Last question, Mary, to you, and then we'll I have questions from the audience. Online harms are growing rapidly, including AI generated. From a prevention perspective, what innovations, digital literacy, caregiver education, AI detection tools, hold the most promise?
AI is the fastest growing type of child sexual abuse that we're encountering now, but online child sexual abuse is going to affect 1 in 6 children. And I think that's a lowball stat. Thorne actually put out a report that I read a week ago that boys between the ages of 9 and 12, 1 in 3 have been asked to either give a sexual photo or have received a sexual photo between the ages of 9 and 12. All right, the other thing that we have to deal with the online dynamic is that children go online and they're really talking to strangers, but the strangers are now friends. So they think of these people who are perpetrating and grooming them as friends. So that also complicates this dynamic. The FBI has said there are 500,000 perpetrators online every single day trying to get to children. All right, and as a friend of mine in law enforcement said, they're not on HomeDepot.com. They are on places where children are playing games. They are on all the regular social media. This is not on the dark net. So again, back to the fragmentation. The good news is that in 2025, 45 states currently have 300 bills pending for online. The problem is there are 300 different bills. And there's no overall coordination, and there's no follow-up on what's working, what's not working. So it's good that the legislators and the people are saying, we need help. You know, we need privacy controls for our children. We need tech to stop allowing 12-year-olds on the platforms. So there is reform happening, but it's not coordinated. So we have to do better than that. Most states have criminalized child sex abuse material online, all right? So you are in trouble if you create it, if you're spreading it, you're in trouble. They have not yet done that for AI-generated child sex abuse material. So we need to close that loophole. The other thing that we need to do is keep up with these laws. So everything is changing so quickly in the online world. Great that we put a law in place, but guess what? In 6 months, there may be another overlay that has to happen to that law to keep it relevant. All right, so we have to have people actually looking at what's happening to children and bringing that legislation up to speed. The other thing that I'm very proud Childhood USA is funding next year is the child advocacy centers don't quite all know what to do when they get children in that have been sexually abused online. They could have been extorted financially. They could have been extorted sexually. So we're funding 3 projects, fingers crossed they'll be replicated in 2026 to help move the field forward, because those types of protections and people who are meeting the children first also need guidance, as do the parents, and we have to, again, mandate prevention for every single school for children, and something that goes home with their parents, and something also that the educators can also learn from.
Thank you. Reverend Lauren, my Pentecostal sister, I see that as a point you want to make.
So-
but I need an Episcopalian answer this time.
I'll go really quickly. We have gotten into our foundation several calls from parents whose sons in this age group who have committed suicide because of sextortion cases. There have been a great article, I think it was USA Today, that highlights some of these things. But I think that there's like a 2-lane a bifurcated lane here. There are those individuals who are going to seek to abuse children online, are typical predators, which the internet is great, but it also opens us up for a lot of vulnerabilities. But then there is that sextortion piece that's a little bit different. And you've talked about the lawmakers and keeping policy up, and let me tell you something, we are far outpaced, we don't pay attention. But the other thing I think is law enforcement, and law enforcement simply does not have the ability to keep up with what is happening. They don't know, they can't. Never in my life did I think that I was going to be a 2-time survivor of sexual violence or sexual assault. I had my childhood sexual abuse, and then one day I'm sitting at the kitchen table and I get a text message, hey, what's going on? And all of a sudden, I have somebody who has sextorted me online. This was only 4 years ago. That person just got out of prison a year ago and was just picked up by his parole officer for violating his parole. These things are happening. And you know why that individual went to jail? Because I was a lawmaker. The person who's with me today had the same thing happen to her, went to a Gainesville Police Department. You know what they said? It's college town, sorry. What the hell? We've already said that it shouldn't matter if you're in Baker County in Florida or in Connecticut. It does not matter. You should be treated with dignity, respect, and the law should keep up and keep pace. And I'm sorry.
No worries. No apology. So we have 3 questions. We have less than 10 minutes, and I want closing thoughts. So keep that in mind as you answer these questions. This first question is for you, Lauren. What does prevention education look like in states that equate topics like consent, health, relationships with prohibited sex ed, or when it is not allowed to share statistics that LGBTQ plus Black, brown, indigenous children are at a greater risk of being exploited? What does education look like when information is censored?
So I think that, certainly our curriculum, which is Safer, Smarter Kids, is in 46 states throughout the country. And so we have really made a distinction, because I don't give you could be whatever political belief spectrum. I think, Aaron brought it up so beautifully. When we start to weaponize child protection in terms, that's when we get in trouble. They've co-opted grooming. It doesn't matter. I don't teach sex ed. We don't teach sex ed in prevention. We teach keeping children safe. We teach a different community. We teach how to have in the really little grades, a trusted triangle, 3 or more grown-ups that you can talk to about anything, whether it's a fight with a friend, a bad dream, or a touch that makes you feel not quite right. As kids get older, it's power dynamics in relationships, the balance of power, identifying red flags. I don't need to get into all of those things, because at the end of the day, it's about how do I keep my kids safe? How do I let them know that they are allowed to have their own identity, who and what they are, and nobody should infringe upon that. And we talked about that scaffolding of knowledge. You start when they're 3 years old, and it goes all the way up. It's so that I make sure that when a 18-year-old girl goes to college, she doesn't have both earbuds in her ears and doesn't lock her college room, her dorm door. It's teaching all the way here how to identify those red flags, what makes me feel uncomfortable, and where do I go? Who do I talk to? So it's not, I don't need to get into all of these politically hot topics, because I'm teaching about how to keep children safe. I don't need to talk about sex ed. I don't need, those things exist. But at the end of the day, it's how do you cut through the crap and keep kids safe?
Thank you, ma'am. There's no name attached to this, but Anthony, I'm going to ask it of you. Is there a film or TV show that you feel accurately depicts what abuse feels like, or that helps the cause?
Yeah, there's been several. I find a lot of documentaries, because the fact is, great artists are speaking to it all the time. So you're going to find it with great artists. Take Tennessee Williams. When Tennessee Williams wrote all of those beautiful plays, what was he doing? He was looking at the darkest parts of his life, his experience. They overlapped into alcoholism. They overlapped into gender, to sexuality. They overlapped in a lot of places. And so I think there's many, and they speak to people in different ways. But a big obvious was one, which was adolescence was an incredible experience of the abuse of power in relation to that, and in a way that we didn't look at it. And that's what we have to do, is as Lauren was saying, if only they had mustaches and wore hats and sluck around and, if only we can. But the perpetration is such a darkness in relation to power and control that only through getting to our highest selves, which I believe is through art and through honest, when people speak the truth, whether it's on stage or in a newscast, we all go, oh. And that's what we all need to do, is just keep speaking the truth.
Thank you, sir. Mary, this next question I'll put to you. How do we educate parents and children on how to be aware of what predators look like without making them suspicious and fearful of everyone?
When I developed the Safe Touches program, and I spent a lot of time with children, both identifying who are the safe people in their triangle, but also letting them know in a very gentle way that some people that they know and trust can also give them unsafe touches. And we used puppets to explain this to the children so that they understood. And this was a randomized controlled trial in the New York City public school system. So I had pre and post tests going on with these children afterwards, and I knew they got it. And that was, I think, the most important thing, that a boy can get unsafe touches, that someone that they like, their coach, can give them an unsafe touch. So we have to look for programs that aren't scaring them, but that are also saying, this can happen to you, and if it does, this is what you do about it. So we have to educate them without scaring them, all right? And I think, again, the same thing has to happen online. These friends that they're all making now, like a third think they're their best friends that are online. And some of them can be being groomed. So we have to, parents have to change their language on, oh, who are your friends online? Or that's not your friend. You can't say that. You have to say, oh, I'd like to meet your friends online. And then begin to also let them know that sometimes the friends online aren't who they seem to be. I mean, there's language. I did a podcast on this recently, and there's actual websites that give parents language on how to talk to their children about it. Because the parents need to reinforce what's being done in school, but I think the goal is to frame it all under the concept of safety, and that my goal is to keep you safe, and that's what we're going to talk about: bicycle helmet safety, crossing the street safety, body safety.
Thank you. Last question, and I need you each to take less than a minute, closer to 30 seconds. Lauren, I'm looking at you. I know. All right. Kidding. I'm kidding. But so last question, and for your closing thought, Mary, I'll start with you. It's a two-part question. Tell us one fact that will make us smarter. Tell us one thing that'll give us hope.
This report is, I've been doing this work for 40 years in New York City. This report is one of the best reports I have ever read in my career in layman's language about what you need to know to protect children, okay? We need to take it out of the shadows, and you need to just tell two people when you leave here today what you learned, and do not put this report on the shelf. Keep it next to you, pick it up, read it every once in a while. We will even have a link on our website about get to your legislator. Click on it. Get to your legislator when you decide what you want to do.
Thank you, ma'am. Anthony, sir, one fact that'll make us smarter, one thought that'll give us hope.
Well, I really do believe you are smart. And I would say the continuing of what you're doing. Everyone in this room cares about kids, wants to change these statistics. And where I'll give you hope is that, in my experience, the difference between someone who is carrying and holding trauma and someone who is able to go, hey, this thing happened to me, will change the world. Because when we take this and give people a recovery, the world changes, because people are then acting out of love and not out of fear.
Thank you, sir. Lauren.
Well, I think you're also all very smart. But I do think that if you didn't know, you all have the power to make the difference in the life of a child every single day. And the hope is each and every one of you, that every single one of you are going to go out today and do something to make a child's life safer, to share this report, and to make a change for other people.
The only thing I have to say in closing is that most of us aren't going to change the world, but you can change the world of one child, and that is more than enough. You have that ripple effect. It will spread. Continue doing the good things that you do, believe, and sometimes just listen.
Thank you, sir. You know, as a person of faith, I think of the scripture in Ephesians 16, the full armor of God. And what you all have shared today, along with this powerful report, will arm all of us to be better warriors in this fight. We've heard words today like facts, community, hope, spread information, scaffolding knowledge, take care of one child at a time, love. Mary, Anthony, Lauren, Aaron, thank you so much for your grace, for your work, for your witness. Thank you to the audience for your listening intently. We turn it over now to board member Joanna Heimbold, will make closing remarks. Thank you all. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.